What's up, guys? He's coming around for his morning walk.
Welcome back, everyone. This is going to be my Godzilla vs. Kong ending and end credit scene video. There was an actual post-credit scene that they shot for the movie, but they actually wound up using the scene during a different part of the film in a different context, so we'll explain that during the video and what's going on with sequels, where they leave the end of the film sort of setting up where they're headed with the franchise after this when they eventually do get around to making new movies. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos, and obviously careful for spoilers for all of the movie if you haven't seen it yet, just because we'll be talking about everything that happens and everything they set up. But just starting at the end of the movie, we'll talk about Easter eggs as we go through the ending and some of the big plot twists that they introduce. But at the end of the film, Mechagodzilla essentially breaks free from Apex's control system and goes rogue, threatening to destroy the rest of Hong Kong, and then it's implied he'd destroy the rest of the world, so it's up to Godzilla and Kong to stop him. Pretty much everybody guessed after the first trailer was released and they introduced the idea that Godzilla had turned on man that it was a big misdirect and Godzilla was just going around the world destroying all these different Apex bases, just Apex bases. He wasn't destroying cities, just the bases, because every time they activated Mechagodzilla to test his systems, Godzilla detected it and went after it to try to destroy it. The way they explain the new version of Mechagodzilla in the MonsterVerse movies, he's a little bit different than the classic Toho version of Mechagodzilla, which is more just like a metal version of Godzilla, is that Demian Bashir's character, Walter Simmons, is kind of like an evil Elon Musk tech company owner who's developing all these new advancements and cool tech products to make the world a better place. But secretly, since the events of the first new MonsterVerse Godzilla movie and the revelation that Godzilla the Titans really did exist, he used his company and the new products that he kept rolling out all the time as a way to develop Mechagodzilla's systems over a long period of time. So all this time in the MonsterVerse timeline of movies, when Monarch is doing its thing studying all the Titans like Godzilla and Kong, all the other Titans, Simmons is building up Apex, the company, as a sort of anti-Monarch with the goal of destroying all the Titans so that humans can become the new Apex life form on planet Earth again. That's the reason why he names his company Apex. It's a very Bond villain thing to do. He does come off in the movie like an old school Bond villain. The whole movie itself is actually pretty great for what it is. It's just this big movie about two giant kaiju going at each other, two big Toho monsters just beating the hell out of each other. It's kind of like going to watch a giant boxing match. As long as you go into the movie understanding that, you'll have a good time. The weakest parts of the film, as you would expect, are the human storyline. They introduce some really cool new mythology and sci-fi concepts, but some of the logic just doesn't totally make sense. But you have to have a little bit of a human plot there just to prop up what's happening with the Titans like Godzilla and Kong. So I think over time they've learned to pull back on the human storyline in all these movies and just beef up all the Titan storyline. Like, we're going to these movies to see the Titans, not to see the humans. So just in general, Godzilla vs. Kong does a better job with that formula, just tuning the amounts of human stuff versus the Titan stuff than previous MonsterVerse movies. But over this long period of time in the MonsterVerse, Apex develops Mechagodzilla, and it's implied they've been testing different beta versions of his systems for years, slowly perfecting him. If you remember during King of Monsters, they introduced the idea that Godzilla is traveling over the world super fast because there are all these underground tunnels that he uses, underground waterways. During the movie, Apex actually has this visualization of it, so you see all these different pathways that go through the Earth's core, through the hollow Earth, which I'll explain in a second. That's how Godzilla has been traveling around so fast. It's also implied that Monarch and Apex have started to use these tunnels too, because you actually see some mechanical systems built in tunnels that they're trying to use to access the hollow Earth. So there's all this crazy infrastructure and all these systems that it took trillions of dollars and probably 20, 30, 40 years to build, since the events of Kong Skull Island at least. Some of the sillier parts of the movie are the hand waving with the amount of money and how much time it took to build some of this stuff. Like Mechagodzilla probably took trillions of dollars to build. We also learned that Apex had been using other titans that they had been artificially growing themselves or cloning in order to test Mechagodzilla. But that means that not only has Apex been harvesting Titan DNA and using it for their tech and product enhancements, using it to make more money to fund the completion of Mechagodzilla, but just in general, they've been creating their own titans themselves, not just mecha titans like Mechagodzilla, but actual biological titans. But that'll be important for future Godzilla and Kong movies. The idea that humans just in general have started to create more titans, like people wonder, is Kong the only version of his species that's left? Well, technically they could clone more Kongs. During the movie, though, Simmons just calls the Skullcrawlers here number 10, so it's implied there are many other Titans that they created for this testing process. Make all the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World jokes in the comments if they're starting to create a bunch of Titans. But the big twist of Mechagodzilla is that he's actually more like Mechaghidorah because they're actually using what they describe as an advanced AI algorithm in combination with the low-level psychic powers Ghidorah possessed in his brains that allowed his three heads to communicate with each other. And just for reference, there actually was a Mechaghidorah in the classic Toho films, but it looked very different. Like, this is actually meant to be Mechagodzilla, that's what they're calling it, but essentially they stole two of Ghidorah's heads, and because his natural powers allowed the heads to operate kind of like psychic master-slave control circuits, they have Dr. Serizawa's son, this character. I think the idea is that he's working for Apex to get revenge on Godzilla for his father's death. They don't really clarify that during the movie, but it's kind of there in the background. Like, you're like, okay, maybe this is why he hates Titans so much, even though his father loved Godzilla and thought that all Titans were wonderful. He's the chief technology officer for Apex, and he's working as the pilot in one of Ghidorah's heads that's connected all their control technology and systems back at their base, allowing him to basically pilot Mechagodzilla like a Jaeger from the Pacific Rim movies. In fact, Legendary made this Godzilla vs. Kong movie. They make the MonsterVerse movies. They also made Pacific Rim. So they're kind of borrowing or ripping themselves off with this whole Pacific Rim Jaeger pilot situation, which is basically what it is. He's kind of like a Jaeger pilot. And you have the Mechagodzilla robot itself running around with the other Ghidorah brain inside its head with an advanced AI, sort of giving it all these commands. But because it's such a massive creation, it requires crazy levels of power, and that's what they use this Hollow Earth plot for during the film, to find a fuel source that's powerful enough to power up Mechaghidorah the way they want to. Once they do find that out, though, it becomes so powerful that it shorts out the psychic connection between Ghidorah's different brains, and that's what causes Mechagodzilla to go on the rampage. What Apex has done over time, though, to upgrade him as much as possible is they built all kinds of extra weaponry all over his body. Like, they have rocket boosters all over his body that help him fly a little. They allow him to move faster. He's more agile than regular Godzilla and Kong during a fight. He's got all kinds of missile launchers all over his body. His beam weapon is more like an upgraded version of Godzilla's atomic breath, and he's got a special drill built into his tail. The way they explain it, though, is that he's already meant to be super powerful. It's just that when he gets the extra new energy source at the end of the movie, that takes him way beyond 100% power level. So that's how he's able to stomp the hell out of Godzilla and Kong on their own, when they're not working together. Like, he's supposed to be way more powerful than Godzilla and way more powerful than Kong on their own. It's only when they team up at the end of the film and tag team him that they're able to defeat him. And even then, they're only able to destroy him when Godzilla recharges Kong's new axe with his atomic breath, giving the weapon the ability to slice through Mechagodzilla like butter. It's almost like they're turning his axe into a lightsaber by charging it up with his radioactive material. The way they explain Kong's weapon, though, is that it actually belonged to one of his ancestors from many thousands of years ago, and it's kind of like a Muto bone combined with one of the dorsal spikes from one of Godzilla's ancestors. Like, they imply that their races had this ancient rivalry that goes back tens of thousands of years, however long the Titans go back in history. They're kind of fuzzy on the timeline. They just call it ancient times, so you have to imagine this tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of years ago, even millions of years potentially. Kong finds the weapon in the home of where his ancestors used to live, the sort of source of this energy that they've been looking for inside the Hollow Earth. So the weapon itself is thousands and thousands of years old, but they confirm that it is the true birthplace of all Titans on Earth, including Godzilla's species, even though it's only Kong we see going back there during the movie. The funny thing about Godzilla during the film is that once they activate Kong's weapon, Godzilla can sense the energy signature and basically atomic breath blasts a hole straight into the hollow earth. So it's implied that if it's that easy for Godzilla to blast his way down there, then he could go back to the hollow earth anytime he wanted to as well. The whole energy source that they keep talking about during the film doesn't fully get explained, but it's essentially this vast source of clean energy emanating from the center of the planet that basically is the source of all life inside the hollow earth. It's also meant to be the source of all the Titans' massive size and abilities. Like, over millions of years, this energy source mutated all these species until they evolved into Titans. They're not totally clear on who created a lot of these structures either, because it looks like they were created by humans or ancient humans who may have lived down here at one point. But there's a Kong-sized throne, there's a central chamber, a temple that looks like it was built by some ancient culture, or maybe it could have been Kong's ancestors themselves, because they do reveal that Kong is super smart on the DL, and he can communicate using sign language and has been hiding all of his intelligence from Monarch this whole time, just because he never trusted them. So if Kong is this smart in present day, and he's still kind of a child, so to speak, it's implied that his ancestors were probably just as smart too. Like, you wonder who created some of these giant monuments built into the side of the mountains in the hollow earth here. Like, there's the hand of a Kong that's pointing, just kind of telling them where to go to get back to this special temple. Maybe Kong's ancestors carved that into the side of the mountain. This will get into the whole idea of where they head with the sequels as they start to explore more of the hollow earth. They just kind of tease the hollow earth during this movie. But after they tag team Mechagodzilla, Kong lands the killing blow with his new weapon, and then Godzilla essentially gives him the Alpha Titan version of a fist bump, like, hey, we're bros now, we're cool, and swims off back to wherever his new home is now, because they blew up his original home during King of Monsters. If you haven't watched the classic Toho monster movies, this ending scene is meant to be a reference to the ending of the original Toho King Kong vs. Godzilla 1960s movie, where at the end of that film, they kind of both go their separate ways, like, peace, we're out of here until the next movie. The actual end of the movie, though, this last scene reveals that Monarch has since taken Kong back to the Hollow Earth, and they've created a new base there to monitor him, and they've started studying the rest of the Hollow Earth, just in general, because this still is the first time anyone's actually been able to travel there and survive. The way they explain that is that there's this special magnetic field that covers the Hollow Earth, sort of protecting it, but it's also there naturally. And the way they visualize it when you're traveling through the barrier is it's meant to be this big 2001 Space Odyssey reference, the evolution of man scene at the end of that film, when he becomes the Star Child. And inside the actual Hollow Earth, gravity is inverted like a Dyson sphere, so you could actually potentially walk around the entire circumference. And when you travel through the barrier, there's this giant gravity inversion that basically flattens you like a pancake, and they have to have these special Apex ships that help them survive that. Whatever dangers there were before the events of this film, they've fixed that by this scene, so they can go back and forth between the surface and the Hollow Earth as much as they want to now. They sort of canonize this as Kong's new home, like he feels like he is home now, because it's his ancestral home, and it feels a lot like Skull Island. The way they describe Skull Island in the film, too, is that it's meant to be a version of the Hollow Earth just on top of Earth's surface. But they try to tease the idea that maybe some of Kong's species might also be down here because it's massive and we've only begun to explore it, but they're not totally sure. We only see the warbats that Kong kills, some other giant bat titans, and a few other assorted smaller titans while they're on their way to this special temple. But the whole idea is that there are many, many different other species of titans that are still living down here. So the whole idea with future MonsterVerse sequel movies is that whatever the next movie winds up being, most of us are probably in agreement that the plot will probably entirely revolve around what's going on with the Hollow Earth in other classic titans coming back from the Toho films via the Hollow Earth. Like, they kept teasing the idea of this ancient War of the Titans in the last couple of films, even back in King of Monsters. If you haven't seen those classic Toho films, there was a film called Destroy All Monsters where they have this massive battle of the Titans. So that would be like the new MonsterVerse movies version of Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, where you have just a giant war of titans. But in terms of the actual post-credit scene that they filmed, and the director said that they just moved to a different part of the movie, I'm assuming that it was actually the scene of them traveling through the Hollow Earth, and you get that 2001 Space Odyssey sequence, and it almost looks like you're teleporting across space-time. I think that was probably the scene that they just shot for the actual end of the film, but then decided that they needed it earlier in the film to explain how they go through this portal. And the thought is that the studio is just waiting to see how Godzilla vs. Kong does at the box office, and if it makes enough money or as much money as they want, then they'll greenlight the next big sequel. But everyone, let me know in the comments if you spotted any of the big Easter eggs during the end of the movie that I didn't mention in the video, and what do you want the next sequel to be? Are you just hoping for them to do more with this Hollow Earth plot that they set up during the film? I will do a full breakdown video of the entire movie. That should post sometime in the next day or two. My full Falcon and Winter Soldier Episode 3 video will post Friday, so if you haven't seen the film and you watched this video for some reason, please do go watch it. It is a lot of fun. Everyone, click here for all my Godzilla vs. Kong videos, and click here for my brand new Falcon and Winter Soldier Episode 3 trailer video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys tonight.